Welcome to the it's the 4th annual Sandown Conservation Commission Fall Festival. This is a much larger event than years past, and the Conservation Commission has worked very hard in forming a much larger event this year, trying to get more local vendors out. We have a nice display table offering a lot of environmental awareness to the town of Sandown. We also have a variety of other tables here, from the Mothers Club to Natalie's Coffee, the Garden Club, the Friends of the Library, Girl Scouts, J&B Butcher, Bruschetti. Today we're also having Fred Borman come and do guided tour walks throughout the trails to point out some of the special features on this property. And I also like to thank the Taylor River Band for having bluegrass today. Also the EFTA, Eastern Fat Tire Association, for coming out and doing some bike demos. Liz Bailey for organizing this incredible bike race. The Ultimate Treasure Hunt for donating their time. And Larry Cormier for doing Build-A-Bird Box. The whole point of today is to get people out to the fields, out to this property. We've owned it now for the past few years. I think we purchased this in 2006. And we want to make more people aware of what this property offers. It's approximately 100 acres. We have a large amount of trails, beautiful views, and we just want people out here. Mountain biking, you can hike, you can trail run, horseback ride, snowshoe, no ATVs. But we're hoping that next year it'll be a much larger event. We'll get more local vendors, crafters, artisans, more food. And hopefully the sun is coming out and we're having a beautiful day.
As part of the Fall Festival this year, we added a scarecrow decorating contest where anybody in the public, residents or clubs and organizations in the town could design and decorate a scarecrow at no fee. We have them displayed here behind me, and then after the festival we'll be moving them and displaying them at the town hall and the library. Some of the clubs and organizations that entered the contest this year are the Garden Club, the Planning Board, and the Rogue Runners, as well as the Mothers Club, Boy Scout Troop, and the Girl Scout Troop Brownies and Daisies. We also have a couple families in town, and this is an event that we're going to build upon, so look for it next year. Start thinking about your ideas now, and you will see it advertised for next fall during our next Fall Festival.
My name is Fred Borman. I'm with the University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension. I'm the educator for forest resources for Rockingham County. My office is in Brentwood. I'm here today at the Sandown Fall Festival. I think this is my 3rd or 4th year in a row that I've been here. The Conservation Commission always asks me to come and lead at least one walk during the course of the day. The first year it was quite small. There weren't as many exhibitors or concessionaires as there are now, and it's growing every year. It's a fantastic event. It's great that the Conservation Commission puts this on for the people of Sandown. I'll be leading a walk to Great Rock a little bit later, describing the vegetation as we go along, anything interesting that I see like vernal pools or cavities in trees. And I also brought a display today. There's a couple of insects, actually 3, that we're very concerned about getting into Rockingham County. Actually, the hemlock woolly adelgid is already here, but we're very concerned about 2 other insects, the Asian longhorn beetle, which a lot of people know is now in the Worcester area and is spreading eastward and westward from there. And then the emerald ash borer is another insect which they found out in Detroit back in 2005 and has worked its way east, so that now it's as close as the western side of the Hudson River in New York. And that's an insect of concern to us because it does feed on ash trees, all species of ash trees, and has the potential to really devastate the population of ash that we have here in New Hampshire. The Asian longhorn beetle has primarily been an urban pest, New York City, Chicago, places in New Jersey, but now it's spreading out into the woodlands around Worcester, So as a forester, I'm concerned, and foresters in general are concerned, with the spread of this pest that feeds on a variety of species of trees, including maples, and what effect it might have on not only the forest resource, but the tourism industry in New Hampshire as well, because a lot of people, as you know, come up here in the fall to look at our leaves and add to the economy of the state. One of my other interests, in addition to the invasive insects, are non-native invasive plants. And this piece of wood that I have here, I use it to try to stump people to try to identify what it is. And a lot of people will say, oh, I think it's white ash or elm or something like that. But actually, this is burning bush, winged euonymus, which is a non-native invasive plant. A lot of people have planted it in their yards. It turns a bright red in the fall. It puts out a lot of berries. But it does take over ecosystems that our native vegetation cannot compete with it. And when I cut this, I did just to show that how big that this can actually get and can shade out native species and prevent like our tree resources of oak or pine from regenerating in the forest. I counted 33 growth rings on this piece of burning bush, and so this has been in place for a number of years and covered quite an area. One way to identify burning bush in the springtime is the fact that it's one of the first shrubs to leaf out in the spring. So if you're driving down a road and you see a wooded stand, say late April, early May, and there's only one shrub that's green, chances are it's going to be burning bush. So we recommend to people that if they find this in their woodlands, that they should remove it. And one of the ways that we do that is with a tool that we call a weed wrench. Which is just a lever system where you attach or you put the stem between the clasps and then just pull back on it. It closes, and then you can pull it right out of the ground. And these are available for use from the Great Bay Estuary Preserve in Stratham. And if anybody has any questions, they can always give me a call at 679-5616 in Brentwood, and I'd be happy to pass the information on to you.
Hi, I'm Barbara. This is Fran. We're with the Sandown Garden Club. We set up a table here to try to attract some new members. You've probably seen our gardens around town. Here's a poster with some photos. And you can go to our website and get some information, sandowngardenclub.org.
My name is Chris Loader, and I'm here at the Sandown Conservation Land for the first mountain bike race on the town forest. And we had a pretty good turnout. We had 16 racers today. Tracks were pretty muddy. It was a little rough going, but there was some good racing in there. I'm a beginner. This is only my second race, and I've only been riding off-road for a couple of years. But I had a great time. And it's nice that the Conservation Committee is having us try some new and different things. I think this was a lot of fun. Glad they did it.
My name is Fred Borman. I'm the educator for forest resources with UNH Cooperative Extension for Rockingham County. They used to call us the county forester, but then they decided to make it a little fancier. So now I'm the educator for forest resources, which includes a lot more than just traditional forestry. But the reason I wanted to stop here first was to show you the stone walls that are here, and to give you a little bit of land use history. When this area was settled, and I'm not sure when the first settlers came to Sandown.
About 1730, I think.
Oh, 1730.
Came
So,
to town 1756.
so basically, when they came here in the 1700s, what they found was primarily what we would call primeval forest. I mean, there were a lot of Native American tribes here in the Northeast when the Europeans came, but over time, as more and more white settlers came into the different areas, they started removing the trees. It was basically subsistence farming. They grew what they could for themselves. They hunted, but basically they weren't selling a lot of their fruits and vegetables. They were basically trying to stay alive. But as communities grew and craftsmen started coming into town, blacksmiths, carpenters, and things like that, then it became more of a barter system. They'd barter for fruits and vegetables for different services. And it was really an agrarian society. It was farming communities. By the 1800s, a lot of the forest in New Hampshire, particularly in southern New Hampshire, had been cleared. These stone walls were built by the farmers, a lot of indentured serfs, people who had had their way paid for to come over from England or Holland or other countries. And then they paid it off by working for a family that had sponsored them. There were also slaves, unfortunately, but there were slaves that worked on a lot of the farms in New England back in the 16 and 1700s. So these stone walls were put up as boundaries between properties, boundaries between different fields. So between 1830 and 1860, sheep was the biggest product that came out of New Hampshire, and actually New England as a whole. And the wool that came from those sheep was shipped to Manchester. If you go up down the Merrimack River there, all the old woolen mills that were on both sides of the river. It went to Haverhill, Lowell, Lawrence, and there were a lot of rich people because of sheep between 1830 and 1860 in New Hampshire. So all of this forest land did not exist 150 years ago. This has all come in the last 100 years because it had been cleared for agriculture, and as we all well know, the soils in New England are not conducive, for the most part, to growing crops. But it made great pasture land, and it made good areas to raise sheep, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of sheep in that 30-year period before the Civil War. So after the Civil War, a lot of the farms started to be abandoned. People moved out west where there was actually good soil for growing things, and the forest started to return. And this is a good example right here. This stone wall that the young lady in the pumpkin shirt is sitting on, it shows you what happens when a field is abandoned. You can see that the forest, if they did not mow the field over there every year, the forest starts to encroach back into the pasture land or into the grassland. And so you'll start to get species like gray birch, pin cherry. In some places a little further south, you start to get eastern red cedar. Gray birch is another species that come in. And over time, the forest evolves. It's not stagnant. I mean, we have a very short lifespan compared to a forest. If we live 70, 80, 90 years, we don't generally see the huge changes that occur in the forest over that time. And so you start to get, after those initial what we call pioneer species, you start to get white pine, you start to get red oak, you start to get beech trees and sugar maples and red maples. And then over time, as the forest grows and evolves and more shade is put down on the forest floor, you start to get the shade-tolerant species like hemlock or sugar maple that come in and form a secondary canopy under the top of the dominant trees. So we have dominant trees, co-dominant trees, intermediate trees, and then what we call suppressed trees, or trees that are never going to be able to get up into the canopy. The other big event that happened, it was in 1938, the hurricane of 1938. Almost all of the mature forest in New Hampshire blew down in 1938. So a lot of the trees that you see here growing now, including the one that's dead and is not growing anymore, started about 20 years before the 1938 hurricane. So there are a lot of trees that are in the 80, 90, 100-year-old category. Now, an old wolf tree like the dead one over there, that may have been a pasture tree because the farmers would leave trees in the pasture for shade for their sheep. And so if you see a tree like that that has a lot of big, large limbs fairly close to the ground, to me that indicates that that tree was here even when this was pasture. Because trees over time, as they grow in concert and in competition with each other, will naturally shed their lower branches. Like the oak tree behind this family right here, you can see that it's got one small dead limb, maybe 15 feet up in the air, but it's not until that tree gets up into the overstory where you start to get more branches. Whereas this dead one over here had branches almost all the way to the ground, and they kept growing because there was no competition. Trees are very efficient when it comes to using energy. If a branch is not pulling its weight by having leaves that are photosynthesizing, the tree will shut that branch down, and over time it will die back and eventually fall off, either in a windstorm or ice or whatever. And this is why, from a forestry standpoint, we like trees that are clear of limbs, because clear wood is more valuable than wood with knots in it, particularly like oak and white pine. And so when I do these walks, I like to give people an idea of what the past land use was and maybe what the future land use is going to be like. Some towns that have town forests have set aside sections of those town forests that are not going to be managed because they want to see what happens in the future. Can it develop into an old growth situation, or are we going to get another 1938 hurricane, which is going to blow the forest down again? Watch out for the wolf.
He's a big baby.
Is that really a wolf?
No, I don't know what he is.
You guys can join the tour if you want.
So anyway, as we go on the walk here, I'm going to point out different species of trees. I'm going to point out different geological aspects of the town forest. Part of the area that we walked through has been harvested recently, in the past 5 years, I guess.
Well, so we on the Conservation Commission here in town have contracted with a forester. So Fred works for the county. We've hired a private forester and developed a forestry management plan. And we'll be doing some cutting, I think, starting in December down by Odell Road. And this will be a 20-year plan. We'll do a section this year, and then maybe in 5 years another section, and another section, and that will be a selective cut to improve the tree stands. So as Fred mentioned, we're going to open up the canopy, let some better light hit trees so they'll grow faster and stronger and bigger. And then we'll probably create some openings, wildlife openings, where we'll open up maybe an acre of land because deer and fox and rabbits like to live on the edge. And we did this about 4 years ago on the original town forest. We did a selective cut. And if you ever walk the Blue Trail, that was made from the logger who took out those trees, and you can hardly notice it. You know, if you look, you can see some woody material on the ground that's getting dissolved into the earth, but it's very strategic and surgical. It's not like clear cut where they just take everything.
Right. And I'll explain a little more as a forester the reasoning behind a harvest like that as we go through. When I first started in this business 30 years ago, our advice to landowners was the reason you harvest is so that you take out the poor trees so that the better trees will grow faster, bigger, put clear wood on, and you can make more money. We still tell people that, but there are a lot more reasons for owning forest land and managing forest land, so that wildlife habitat, recreation become as important as just growing trees for the sake of growing trees. We have, if you look at the forests of New Hampshire, we have very little open space like the field here in comparison to what is now mature forest. About 80% of the forest land base in New Hampshire is mature forest. And that is beneficial to some animal species, but it's detrimental to like migratory songbirds that need, fields and edges, like along the stone wall. And Mark mentioned, things like fox. and chipmunks and squirrels, they love these stone walls, and snakes, they love stone walls because in the summertime they absorb the heat, and so for a snake anyway, they like being cold-blooded. They like the warmth of being able to lay out. So if you looked around in these stone walls, you'd probably find snake skins everywhere. So anyway, we're going to start walking because I know it gets a little chilly when we're just standing around, but I'm going to stop at various places to describe different features of the forest and what their benefits are, and so let's take a walk.
So high, man, when it's
A reference point on scale was exactly 400 feet long from one end to the other.
It's been a while, huh?
I'm going to the river, gonna take my rocking chair. If the blues don't get me, I'm gonna get out of here. Tell me how long do I have to wait? Can't I get it now? Must I hesitate? This morning, looking for my shoes, looked behind the couch and felt those hesitation blues. Tell me how long do I have to wait?